Hello, beautiful friends. Happy solstice. This is too exciting. This is getting too exciting. Everything has changed. So, for us, the solstice peaked in the middle of the night after 1 p.m. Pacific time. So, depending on your time zone, it was a different time. But in that moment, the false matrix that has been here in this world for hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions, really, I don't know how old the false matrix is, was dismantled down to a bare bone. It's almost the way that it looked like in the middle of the night was like if you had an old factory, like a large factory, and you would take all the bricks out and you would take the roof down, you would take the ceilings and the floors down, and all that would be left behind would be just, maybe the pillars that used to hold the structure. And so this is how much dismantling took place as a result of all the incredible work that humanity, many of us have done, especially since 2020, and of course this year on 11/11. I cannot imagine anything more absolutely mind blowing, actually. Absolutely can't even imagine it. And it's almost like now is we were promised that a new world was going to start on December 13th. And so this is just the result. And we will take those pillars down too. That's all that was left last night. So, I would say let's talk a little bit about the false matrix, and I will go into the depth of it. Maybe next week we will do some calls. It's holiday time, so a lot of us don't have to work and we can just hang out online like this. And so I'm going to put together a presentation based on Yogananda's teachings. Yogananda probably is one of the purest teachings that is very easily accessible to us. He didn't have to hide the truth. He really went for it. He truly unveiled who created the false matrix, how it was created, and he describes it in detail in the second coming of Christ. So that was really rare because to reveal the truth within the false matrix was always so dangerous. And there is a story that Yogananda also shared that actually we could even say that that we have big names for these beings, right? So I'm just going to name a few of those, but we know Yogananda spoke about the being as Satan who created the false matrix, but that's just because it was easily understood. And in a way, the word itself comes from a Hebrew word, and it simply means the one who is against the rest of life, against the divine reality. And so there was a being once upon a time in cosmic creation, in this cosmic cycle. And in the Bhagavad Gita, where they describe the length of a cosmic cycle, just so that we know, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that one cosmic cycle is 150 billion years. So imagine a cosmic cycle, 150 billion years. So within that cosmic cycle, we have the appearance of what we would call cosmic evil. And the cosmic evil was described in many different traditions. And just to go away from the biblical terms, we can look at Gnosticism. And in Gnosticism, they called this being a demiurge and someone who would pretend to be God. And so, it's not really we don't need to understand it all. We just need to understand the big picture, which was simply within this cosmic cycle, we had beings who were very selfish. They were driven by selfishness. They were driven by greed. But these beings emerged from the same source when the source decided to create from itself. And as you know, Source creates through sound and all is frequency. Even when we chant Om, we are really chanting the frequency of creation. We are attuning ourselves to the original purity of creation. And so all became frequency. And one of those frequencies, that frequency didn't sound so good. And when it didn't sound so good, it was simply out of tune. And because it was out of tune in this cosmos, it was creating beings from itself that were also out of tune. Just gonna change the picture here so you can look at our beautiful Divine Mother and Yogananda. And so these beings that got created by that tune, they were really driven. That was their nature. They were driven by their own nature, and their nature was selfish. Whereas the rest of creation had different nature and was expressing the nature of oneness of all life. And so, in terms of percentage, I would say we can probably say 90% was, or around that, all life was in oneness. And then maybe 10% at the most, and maybe that's even too much, would be expressing itself as selfish and wanted to be actually separated from the rest. But you cannot separate anything that came from one source. And so this is what then ended up happening on planet Earth. These beings who wanted something for themselves, they didn't want to be part of wholeness and oneness. They created some worlds that were actually disconnected through geomagnetic field. So it's actually scientific. So they created a different electromagnetic field, and through that electromagnetic field, they disconnected a little bubble from the rest of creation. And the earth ended up in that bubble. The way that I was showing it and the way that I have been seeing it is just like having a little drop of oil in the ocean of love. And so the false matrix itself, the separation, the little world that they wanted to keep for themselves was really not much. But for us humans, it did make a difference, of course, because it changed our reality. And so what they used electromagnetic frequencies. Yogananda once said something so strange. He said, Satan in his nature is electromagnetic. Now, maybe people dismissed it, when they were listening to him because it didn't seem to make any sense. But our body has an electromagnetic field, and our earth has an electromagnetic field. Our sun has an electromagnetic field. So within nature, we have the two forces. We have the force of Divine Mother, which is magnetism. She's the one who holds things together. And then we have the other force, and that's electricity. And that is the energy of Divine Father. So when we receive, for example, an initiation, we receive divine electricity from Source. And it's always transmitted to us to initiate us into higher state of functioning. So it is not by surprise that the being that we know as the adversary would actually manipulate the electromagnetic field to create illusion. And again, the details of it, I will present it maybe next week when I put it together so that we can look at all the evidence that we have from the great avatars. So again, the manipulation of the electromagnetic field caused us to perceive reality through our five senses as if it was real the way that we have known it until now, but disconnected from the divine reality which is all around. Our senses became truly manipulated so that they perceive all that surrounds us in this world as real and disconnected from divine reality by that little membrane, which is like the film, on the oil bubble. Now, the beings who would come and enter this little bubble, in terms of cosmos, the earth is a speck of dust. But it did matter. It did matter that the earth is returned back into divine creation, and that is our ascension. And so the beings like you and me who would have to enter this manipulated reality, we simply had to come very, very strong, and not everyone managed, so that when you enter illusion, you don't become one with the illusion. And so we have that wonderful quote from Uncle Jesus, be in the world, be in the false matrix, but don't believe it. Don't be of the false matrix. Don't become it. It was not always easy. And actually, it was very difficult, of course, because of the manipulation of the electromagnetic field that manipulated our senses. And then we saw objects in front of us. And it was really profound, this manipulation. It was really unbelievable. In a way, you could say it's like a hoax, tricking humanity. And the way it worked, it truly worked through the five senses. And so again, this is the false matrix and how it worked. The creators of the false matrix, they wanted to trap as many divine beings as they could. And so they introduced something that we didn't know from higher realms. And that was actually sexual procreation. Of course, it became completely normal in this world, but that was also one of the tricks. That's why the great gurus never wanted to participate in it, because they didn't want to bring children into this world. They didn't want children to be born into the false matrix. They didn't want to participate in sensual pleasure because they knew that's one of the traps of the false matrix. And so these creators of the false matrix wanted more and more and more and more beings to be born through sexual desire into the false matrix so that they could trap them. And they trapped them on the wheel of karma. So they created actually a trap in the fourth dimension in the astral sphere, so that when a person was, departing from this world, they would go into the astral, but quickly they would be recycled back, and it became actually again normal. And so we even had then teachings about reincarnation. But the great avatars who came here, they taught that we have to immediately stop the reincarnation cycles and that we have to get liberated. But again, it was very misunderstood because, everybody was affected by this, by the illusion. It was hard to understand. But now we can speak about it a little bit more just to understand how different this new world will be for us and what we need to do to actually purify our mind and our emotional field, how we need to purify mainly our mental body and actually all the earthly bodies that we have. But the mental body is, of course, the one that is most burdened because we've been inside the false matrix and we became co-creators of it by thinking all the time. We created habits within the false matrix. And the habits, right? Again, when we create something in a false reality, if we step into the true divine reality, we have to become free again, free from the old self. Our old self, which probably we all had, maybe we still have it, is the self that is on repeat. It's defined by very repetitive thoughts. Even the thoughts that just say, I'm a woman, I'm a woman, I'm a woman, I'm a woman. Okay, I'm a woman. Even that is actually part of the false matrix. Because within the divine reality, we are not defined like this at all. We are divine, immortal beings, and we are creator beings. So we create with our thought something new and beautiful instead of using thought to repeat and to constantly affirm who we are when that is not who we are. So when I was able to actually go outside the false matrix, I was able to see it from a distance. And of course, it looks very minuscule. And yet it was affecting all of us in incredibly profound ways for a very, very, very long time. I do believe that the false matrix started in Mu, because I do remember when these very, very rough and insensitive, not compassionate, not loving beings came from cosmos. I remember when they did come to the earth. And so to me, I think that that's when they started this false matrix. They truly took down the original electromagnetic field of the earth and gave us something else. And it was almost like we used to be part of the divine reality. So we would be in the ocean of divinity and we would be on a planet. And we had other planets and we had, infinite, so many universes, so many planets, so many galaxies. And all the planets were originally created to have beautiful experiences for the beings who are embodied on them, as long as the beings want to play the game of life on that planet. There was no life and death, but there was switching of maybe location in the hologram of cosmos. So you could have beautiful experiences on Venus, you could have beautiful experiences on a sun, you could have beautiful experiences on the earth. And every time you wanted to have new experiences, you would take on a different embodiment, which was not physical, but it was much more ethereal, so that you can easily let go. Yogananda described this body as the rainbow body, and he said it would be just like a rainbow. So let's say you would be wanting to be on planet Earth, and so your body would be the rainbow that you see in the sky. You would experience something beautiful on planet Earth, and when you were done experiencing it, this beauty, this creation, this delight, this divine freedom, then you would simply dissolve the rainbow, just like it disappears in the sky, and you would move on wherever you want to move next. So there was no need for the process of birth and death. Um, so when I was able to see it from a distance, everything was like the ocean of divinity filled with incredible love. But within that ocean was just that one little drop of the false matrix. So I was able to go in and out, of course, plus, as we are now still in a world that remembers the false matrix really well, I was able to see how it works. And so every thought that we had, and especially a thought that created some kind of emotion, so thoughts of fear, or even thoughts that would be affirming constantly. I even saw from a distance what it looks like when a person has an addiction. And so to me, it was not so much about what the person was addicted to, but it was so much more about all the thoughts that the person was investing into that addiction. So maybe if you've had addiction or you know what addictions work like, it is obsessing with something. So it's an obsessive thought. And it's a very actually fear driven thought. And so I could see from a distance that, for example, the obsessing thought was very, very, very much generating the matrix itself. So we became, in a way, the co creators of that false matrix. So our thoughts were being used to perpetuate it, and our life force was being used to perpetuate it. Human beings, they got really manipulated within the false matrix, and they got manipulated in the spine and in the nervous system. So that's why the liberation techniques always worked with the spine, with the central nervous system. Because for a being to be liberated, they had to awaken fully and completely their life force, which was dormant. And it was not dormant. How could we all have dormant Kundalini? It was because it was made dormant. These beings, they actually didn't reside on planet Earth. They resided in the astral sphere, in the fourth dimension of the Earth. And so they were invisible to humanity. Now, I always wonder about it, how can anyone have such evil intent? How can anyone be driven so much by selfishness? But, we do have people like this in this world, don't we? And it's maybe not easily understandable because we are beings driven by love and by service and selflessness, but we have seen beings like this in our world. So, yes, unfortunately, these beings were truly driven by all the wrong things. And so they actually blocked the life force of the humans, and they blocked life force at the base of the spine, and then they blocked the life force in the medulla oblongata, which is part of our brain stem. And then the yogis who would come here to liberate and liberate and liberate, they always had just one goal. And I call them yogis, but you can say any mystic, anyone who came on a mission here trying to hold on to their light, not to be swallowed by the monster. They knew that the way to liberate a person would be to unblock these locks. These were actually locks, kind of like implants, at the base of the spine. That had to be the first one that had to be unblocked and unlocked, and then the one in the brainstem. Now, this is so crazy, right? Because we've had all these incredible traditions of meditation. Now, for meditation to actually unlock a person, it would have to be about liberation from these blocks, which is part of, for example, Kriya Yoga, and being so powerful and so focused not to have any thoughts about the matrix itself. So it required mastery, right? It was not easy to be liberated. But for example, Yogananda, his huge mission was to liberate humanity and to liberate as many as he could. When Yogananda prayed, and he prayed always, he was like constantly living in divine consciousness, he always was asking, can I please bring you as many liberated beings out of this matrix? He didn't call it that, but he called it, um, a reality that was created by Satan. And he said, can I please bring as many as I can to the threshold to Divine Mother? Can I bring them to Divine Father? Can I liberate them from this world? And part of the Yogananda lineage is, of course, Babaji. And Babaji has been seen around. And I personally met Babaji in the physical reality. And he comes to us when we are on this path. He visits us. He talks to us. He gives us instructions. And his purpose is to make sure that no one is left behind. No one. And so you can see no one left behind is really the purpose of this lineage. So the way that they always taught us in this lineage is that we move energy through the spine, and we do it through Kriya Yoga, which is not a yoga of movement, but it's a yoga of energy. So we are sitting upright, but I also tested this out laying down on my back, so it works also laying down. And you move basically your cerebral spine fluid through your incredible focus and skill. It's not easy. It takes a lot of practice, and you move it through the entire spine all the way to the medulla oblongata in the brainstem, and then you allow the energy to go into your third eye. And then when we are successful, we are able to sustain it and exit the false matrix. So in a way, you could say that when someone is in a sustained state of awakened kundalini, which is the cobra above the head, then they are also in a sustained state outside of the false matrix, even though they are here in the body. So they are in the world, but not of the world. So this is all, ending. And last night, really, it was this incredible dismantling of all of this, which will be a huge liberation. So what is required of us now? This is a new world. I don't want to look at old tools that might not be, useful right now, because we've had a lot of tools that were created in the matrix so that we can survive it, and not really. But now we have new world. We have new bodies, even though it doesn't seem like it. We have new opportunities like never before. So the number one thing would be to be a little bit more like the fool archetype in the 22 archetypes that we have. And today we had Alex Utterman presenting about Dattatreya, and I'm posting it on YouTube so that you guys can go back to it. It was about a 2-hour event. And what I really wanted is that we learn about Dattatreya, because Dattatreya is the new you and me. Dattatreya is now the divine self embodied in us. We have all these stories, all truth very often had to be hidden in stories that seemed like it really happened. The truth had to be hidden from those who created the Matrix. They used technology to search for information, but they themselves didn't know the truth about divine reality. But they could find information. It was almost like, they were using something like the internet to search for information. And when they would come across something that could reveal their existence, they would immediately get rid of it. So even Yogananda, he said, they actually stopped his heart. In a way, he said they killed him. And so his guru had to bring him back to life because he had the powers from the divine reality. So all these great beings, they had the power of the divine reality. And so they were performing miracles. But some of them, right, they didn't tell the full truth. They were using metaphors And so they were, for example, I don't know if you were on the call with Alex, but she was talking about some divine being having 72,000 girlfriends. Well, that's a huge metaphor, of course. Of course, the being didn't have 72,000 girlfriends, but within our bodies are 72,000 nadis. And so the truth of our body had to be also hidden, because the body is a tool for ascension. For example, when you do Kriya Yoga, you need your body to ascend. You are ascending through the body. You are ascending through your spine. You are ascending through your nervous system. You are breathing to ascend. So it's really amazing. Yes, we are becoming Dattatreya. This is actually, like, for me, is a code name, right, for the divine self. It is amazing. So much to be said about this. But the number one thing is now we probably are filled with habits that we created. And I don't mean bad habits, I mean just habits of how we lived within the old false matrix. So now Dattatreya is the fool, kind of having fun, being spontaneous. Maybe you heard Alex speaking about how all these divine beings were unpredictable. Why would they be unpredictable? Because they were their divine self. The divine self doesn't have a habit of the self. It is unlimited, and so it can be anything it wants to be. And so one day they would seem like this character, the next day they would have a different personality. And so that's it. Yeah, the nadis are the channels in our bodies, subtle bodies. And so, that's where the number came from. So now we are to be a little bit more unpredictable. You see, a person in the old matrix, right, in the false matrix, became incredibly predictable, mainly with the thoughts that the person would be having about their life, about the world. And we called it a personality. Yogananda called it a calcified fossil. He said, don't be such a fossil. And he meant, don't take your personality on. Be free. Be free. Be like the fool. Dance spontaneously. Be joyful. Laugh. So that's going to be, we will do it together again. Because I think that's the hardest part, right? Because we obviously maybe have been here, I'm sure many of us, for many decades. And so getting used to the new, it's like the cage is now fully open. How do we wake up tomorrow? Do we want to be thinking about the old false matrix, or do we want to be dreaming like we used to? We used to dream our life into being. So we do it now a little differently. Now that we are after this incredible solstice, we are still in it, of course, today, but the peak was a few hours ago. We have a few tools, and I will present them tomorrow. And that is, how can we change our frequency, and how can we do it reliably? So I will be showing a few tools that I use that are really cheap for, like, I don't know, $9, so everybody can afford it. And it's different brain waves. But the number one tool that we now have, and that one I would like to really emphasize, is actually love. And love is generated often by devotion. So I will show tomorrow how to change your brain waves so that you can be more free from the old self, because it's all about the nervous system. It's all about the synapses and how our nervous system got used to the old world. It got used to the false matrix. Our senses. Our senses. So our senses used to be really wonderful. Our senses actually were part of divine creation, and our senses were meant to be very, very like a beautiful mechanism that would allow us to interact with creation. But what happened through the false matrix, through the beings who trapped us, they manipulated our senses. And so the way that they did it, it's pretty fascinating. So when you go to a movie theater and you're looking at the screen, so you are using your eyes, so you see, and then you are using your ears, so you hear, but you are actually sitting in a chair and you are watching and maybe eating popcorn. And so you are using two senses to perceive the movie. But in this reality, It's exactly the same, except for one thing. The movie is playing, but we are using 5 senses. So it seems so real because we are simply in a multi-sensual, well, we were in a multi-sensual or sensory matrix. So instead of using 2 senses, we are using 5. And so the movie feels even much, 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 much more real. So that's how it worked. But again, this is a liberation. I also recommend when you wake up in the morning now to stop yourself from thinking about your life unless you are thinking in love and thinking with joy. If you think about something that is not enjoyable, then, we had the mudra, if you remember, where you cross both right and left hand. Sorry, it's like when you say, I cross my fingers. So you cross your index finger and your middle finger. Yes, thank you, Ramina. Exactly like that. And you do that on both hands simultaneously. And that collapses, that's a mudra, that collapses duality. So, and then we just say, I am that I am. So we disrupt the old self. So we cross our fingers on both hands and we say, I am that I am. I am that I am. I am that I am. And if you want to take it to the next level, of course, because we have so many tools within us, we are gazing into the third eye. Gazing into the third eye is still an incredibly fast way to transcend illusion. So, the way that I think about it, because I gaze into my third eye all day long if I can, even when my eyes are open, because you want to start focusing in the third eye. But when your eyes are closed, it's of course much easier. I imagine that there is like a little screen in my third eye. So, as if you were watching a movie in your third eye. But because it's in your third eye, you have to lift your physical eyes to be able to see the screen. And that's the lifting that actually opens the third eye. And it's so much fun. Once you get good at it, and it takes a few days to get good at it, just a few days, once you get good at it and start seeing things through the third eye, and I don't mean like random stuff, because sometimes people meditate and they start seeing random stuff. This is much more focused. This is a skill. And so this is a skill that we use to actually really self-realize. It just opens. It opens. That's it. And especially now, and we will look at it tomorrow in a little bit more detail how this is all done. But I wanted to say the number one tool beyond all tools is when the heart is filled with God essence. And that means we feel such love, such joy. And sometimes we have to generate it. I generate it for myself the way that I do it. I go to something reliable. Like, for example, I go to reread my journal where I wrote down some of these celestial stories to again create the sense of love, devotion, even to a point that you feel like you have tears of joy in your eyes. That is the most powerful state to be in. And that's why devotion is actually a tool. It's not exactly what we think it is. Devotion only is a great tool if it generates incredible amount of love that is not our typical state of being. We want to always escalate it. And so whatever it is for you, escalate through devotion. And it could be, looking at your animal. If you have animals, look into the eyes of the animals and just tell them how much you love them. Escalate your love. But it also could be working with Divine Mother. It could be working with Yogananda. It could be listening to the Bhagavad Gita. It's very escalating when you listen to the Bhagavad Gita. And so I'm going to play chapter 12 from the Bhagavad Gita. It's 6 minutes, and then we will meditate. And just close your eyes, focus on your third eye, put on a smile. Even just smiling escalates our state. And so we want to always, I call it, feel higher, but also faster. And that is the escalation of our feeling nature. And so, where do we have the Bhagavad Gita? I do recommend listening to the Bhagavad Gita again and again and again. And you see, we have so much more here that I wanted to share. But the Bhagavad Gita has the wonderful translation by Stephen Mitchell. I love working with Stephen Mitchell's translations of all the books he translated. He translated the Tao Te Ching. I think it's the best translation that exists in this world. And the same with the Bhagavad Gita. He also has the voice of Divine Father. When I met Divine Father and Divine Father was speaking to me in English, he was totally sounding like Stephen Mitchell. And so that is the great bonus. So if you're not familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita is an amazing divine conversation between Arjuna, which apparently was Yogananda is in one of his past lives, and he is speaking to the Lord. And in this case, the Lord is Krishna. And this chapter 12 is just fabulous. So let us listen together. It's part of our beautiful devotion here. I've got it prepared. All right, chapter 12.
Chapter 12. The Yoga of Devotion. Arjuna said, "One man loves you with pure devotion, another man loves the unmanifest. Which of these two understands yoga more deeply?" The Blessed Lord said, "Those who love and revere me with unwavering faith, always centering their minds on me, they are the most perfect in yoga. But those who revere the imperishable, the unsayable, the unmanifest, the all-present, the inconceivable, the exalted, the unchanging, the eternal, mastering their senses, acting at all times with equanimity, rejoicing in the welfare of all beings, they too will reach me at last. But their path is much more arduous, because for embodied beings, the unmanifest is obscure and difficult to attain. Those who love and revere me, who surrender all actions to me, who meditate upon me with undistracted attention, whose minds have entered my being, I come to them all, Arjuna, and quickly rescue them all from the ocean of death and birth. Concentrate every thought on me alone, with a mind fully absorbed, one-pointed. You will live within me forever. If you find that you are unable to center your thoughts upon me, strengthen your mind by the steady practice of concentration. If this is beyond your powers, dedicate yourself to me, performing all actions for my sake. You will surely achieve success. If even this is beyond you, rely on my basic teaching. Act always without attachment, surrendering your actions' fruits. Knowledge is better than practice. Meditation is better than knowledge, and best of all is surrender, which soon brings peace. He who has let go of hatred, who treats all beings with kindness and compassion, who is always serene, unmoved by pain or pleasure, free of the I and mine, self-controlled, firm, and patient, his whole mind focused on me. That man is the one I love best. He who neither disturbs the world nor is disturbed by it, who is free of all joy, fear, envy, that man is the one I love best. He who is pure, impartial, skilled, unworried, calm, selfless in all undertakings, that man is the one I love best. He who, devoted to me, is beyond joy and hatred, grief and desire, good and bad fortune. That man is the one I love best. The same to both friend and foe, the same in disgrace or honor, suffering or joy, untroubled, indifferent to praise and blame, quiet, filled with devotion, content with whatever happens, at home wherever he is. That man is the one I love best. Those who realize the essence of duty, who trust me completely and surrender their lives to me, I love them with very great love. Chapter 13. The Fear.
So that was chapter 12 from the Bhagavad Gita, translated by Stephen Mitchell. And you know, again, these great texts, they always tell us that to be unmoved by pain and pleasure. And so once again, we go back to the center. Yeah. Once to the center. Sorry, I was reading the text here. And so remaining in the center. I actually wanted to bless us here with a video that I came across. It totally just like came on my newsfeed on YouTube, and I clicked on it and I experienced a miracle of healing. This really, it's actually from a religious channel, but that's okay. This little girl is so in love with what we would call the divine, with God, and it's in such purity that when she prays, her prayer is immediately heard. And the way that she was told to pray is to bring healing to humanity, to people, physical healing. Now, not everybody is struggling with their health, but if you are, may you be healed by watching this little girl, the way she transmits pure God essence. When I saw it, I was just getting ready. I had my phone next to me. I experienced a huge miracle. Huge miracle. And actually, I've been coming back to this video, and the healing that takes place is absolutely unbelievable. And I think it's because she's such a pure heart. And even though, you know, she's coming from the Christian religion, it's okay. She loves God. And she trusts that when she prays, God, Divine Mother, they respond. And so receive this healing energy, whether you need it or not. And if you don't need it, share it with others who might need it. Because it was only in the false matrix that we experience disease. So I'm going to play it. I'm going to fast forward it.
My guests, Jordan and Michelle Cook. And
I have a...
as far as what you done, what did you think?
It was a lot to take in. When she first told me this story, I hate to say it, I almost doubted it at first. Honestly,
I know Jordan knew, but between you and me.
I was skeptical, and I really felt bad about it.
Means even more than heal. It means the restorer. And
Okay,
that's what
here it
God
is.
wants to do. He wants to be Jehovah Rapha in Yeshua's name. He wants to restore whatever is damaged. Jordan, will you look in the camera and will you pray for people to be healed just like Jesus told you to?
Receive it.
In Jesus' name, I pray that everyone who has any sort of illness or has something wrong with their bones or anything like that, please have God heal them this very instant.
And
There's someone being healed of breast cancer right now. I can feel it.
that is wonderful. Anything else?
I also heard God say that there were 53 people being healed of just any kind of cancer, and also a person named Jack with autism.
I feel the sweetness of the purity of a young child praying for you.
And so it is. And so it is. This video, you can see the title here. It's an 8-year-old girl Payne's amazing message from Jesus, and the channel is called ISN, Supernatural Network. The energy of this is unbelievable, and you can just see the transmission in her eyes. It's just precious. And with that, we will go into our meditation. If you feel like meditating with us, we will meditate today for the new beginning, for the Christ consciousness now being restored in this world. Where the false matrix ends, Christ consciousness, Hyland, has been restored. And so you can say Christ consciousness has been restored, and now it will be unfolding. So don't believe what you see. Just always go within, because the truth now is really within us. Yeah. Oh, so sweet. Thank you.